Well, we're here to highlight the work that the Great Salt Lake Collaborative has been doing, especially our reporting trip out to the Eastern Sierra where we visited Owens Lake and Mono Lake. They're a bit of an analog to what we are experiencing at the Great Salt Lake with it being a saline lake that's drying up and trying to figure out what could be done to save it or at least mitigate the worst impacts of that.
What's one of the things that you guys are hoping to gain? This is the beginning of a long series with holding these public kind of open house kind of Q&A events.
Well, with all of the work we do, we want to drive public engagement. The best way to get our public officials to take action on any given thing is to have voters and citizens care about those issues and weigh in on that. It's definitely important. We've talked about how the Great Salt Lake is sometimes just that smelly place we don't really go do anything at, but it's actually very important to all of us that live up and down the Wasatch Front. So we want to make sure people realize the role that it plays for all of us, whether we realize it or not, and that it needs some attention.
Have you talked with, the Utah population, what's their thinking, or resident, what's their concern about?
I think air quality is always top of mind for people along the Wasatch Front, and we are familiar with that. And luckily, it's only on so many days out of the year, but it's a real health hazard for a lot of people. And certainly, the more that the Great Salt Lake shrinks, we're going to have more pollution days. We're going to have more hazardous dust in the air. And so that's definitely something that people along the Wasatch are well acquainted with.
What do you plan to do as far as the presentation tonight goes? What are you hoping to gain just from even this first one?
Well, I haven't been able to interact with a lot of readers, viewers since this published, so it'll be really interesting to get some feedback from people who are here tonight, see what really struck a nerve with them, struck a chord with them, what parts they care about, and maybe that can help us in future reporting.
How it's important to have this type of event?
Oh boy, how important is it? It's great. It's really important that we do this type of community outreach and get to interact face to face, a way to get feedback from the community beyond just the internet comments and tweets that might be only leaning, might not give you the rich picture of what people care about, what people think. So I'm really happy that we're having these kinds of events where we can face to face with people in the community.
So 3 things that you learn about the California lakes, I guess.
Say that one more time, 3 things.
Top 3 things that you learn about California lake.
Yeah. Well, one of the most important things that I like to point out when we talk about these lakes, Owens Lake and Mono Lake, they made a choice not to save Owens Lake. They've mitigated the worst health effects of Owens Lake and the dust, but LA kept the water. They didn't decide, once they became on the hook after the lawsuits and they were forced with mitigating it, they mitigated it. They didn't stop taking that water. So it's a cautionary tale. They made a choice out there on where they wanted to go. So number 1, I think that's an interesting point. Number 2, it was talking with some of the officials from LA Department of Water and Power out there. They were shocked when they heard how big the Great Salt Lake is in compared to Owens Lake. To have the man, Paul Liu, who's in charge of the dust mitigation at Owens Lake, his jaw just kind of dropped when he heard we have already 800 square miles of exposed lake bed compared to the 48 that they're responsible for. He just was shocked by that, and the overarching message from them was try not to do what we had to do.
What will be next step?
The next step is just keeping the word out there with the public, more reporting. I'm not sure what's next for the Great Salt Lake Collaborative, but it's a great endeavor and proud to be a part of it.
Anything else you like that?
That's it. Do you need me to tighten up the 3 lessons?
Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, probably just as a summary.
When we were out in California at Owens Lake and Mono Lake, it was just interesting to see the look of shock when the people responsible for the dust mitigation heard how big Great Salt Lake is by comparison. It is a much bigger problem if we have to do the same kind of dust mitigation. I don't know if I can own.
One more question.
Yeah.
As the reporter,
Yeah.
before this project started, and now, what's changed for you?
That's interesting. As a reporter, one thing that this opened my eyes to is just the interconnectedness that we have with water issues in the West. This is not happening in a vacuum. Owens Lake and Mono Lake and what's happening with the Great Salt Lake, that's all connected with the Colorado River and water shortages everywhere. So we don't have that. I think. Let me roll that again. When we were out, as a reporter, being out in California and seeing the issues they face at Owens Lake and Mono Lake, it really highlights the interconnectivity that is facing the West and our water access issues. What's happened with Owens and Mono Lake and what's happening with the Great Salt Lake is connected with the Colorado River Basin and water access issues throughout the West. So we really need to get a grip on things now. We may not have the luxury of just waiting and seeing how things evolve, because it's only going to get tighter throughout the West.